Plants are an incredibly old and diverse kingdom of organisms. The diversity of plants that you see today is as a result of several abiotic factors, some of which include sunlight, water, soil, climate, and terrain. Sunlight is essential to plants as it enables photosynthesis. Sunlight exposure can drastically affect the anatomy and growth patterns of plants. Plants which only receive sunlight within a given time of day may evolve larger leaves to maximize the amount of sunlight they catch, whereas plants with prolonged sunlight exposure may have smaller leaves or a thicker waxy cuticle to decrease their transpiration rate and withhold water. In addition to sunlight, plants need water for photosynthesis, nutrient uptake, and in some plants, even for reproduction and fertilization. Different plant species require different soil types depending on the nutrients they need for growth and maintenance. Some plants could prefer more acidic soil, while others might prefer more alkaline soil, as soils with different pH levels contain different nutrients. Climatic conditions play a critical role in determining the dominant phylum and which plants survive in a given ecosystem. Plants that grow in hot, dry environments have adapted to conserve as much water as possible, while plants in cooler climates have adapted to withstand freezing temperatures, survive low levels of sunlight, and reproduce without relying on pollinators. The terrain in which a plant grows can also affect its physiology. Plants that grow in hillsides or rocky terrain have adapted to survive in dry, nutrient-poor soils, typically featuring deep roots to anchor themselves securely and to maximize nutrient absorption. The slope of terrain can also influence the sunlight and wind exposure a plant receives, which affects its growth. Asexual reproduction is the process whereby a single parent organism produces new offspring which are genetically identical, whereas sexual reproduction requires the fusion of a sperm and egg cell produced by two organisms of the same species. Sexual reproduction is the best for maximizing species adaptability because the fusion of genetic material between two gametes allows for a higher chance of genetic mutation, increasing the chance that a new desirable trait will develop that will spread throughout the species population as a result of natural selection. Bryophytes are a group of non-vascular plants consisting of mosses, liverworts, and hornworts. They thrive in moist environments such as damp soils, rainforests, wetlands, and especially in freshwater environments. They don't have a vascular system, meaning they don't possess true roots, leaves, or stems. Additionally, they don't possess cuticles for water retention. These traits are not conducive to large size, as they cannot grow larger than 5 millimeters in height without a vascular system to provide support. They cover a large surface area as they need to absorb water and cannot grow vertically. Bryophytes can reproduce both asexually and sexually. Asexual reproduction occurs through fragmentation or the production of specialized structures such as gemmacups, which contain small reproductive structure called gemmi. They are dispersed by rain or wind and can grow into new individuals. Sexual reproduction in bryophytes involves the production of haploid gametes by male and female structures called antheridia and archegonia respectively. The sperm produced by the antheridia swims through water on the outermost surface of the bryophyte to reach the archegonia and fertilize the egg. The fertilized egg develops into a sporophyte, which is attached to the parent plant and produces spores through meiosis. The spores are dispersed by wind and water and can grow into new individuals. The dominant phase of the bryophyte's life cycle is the gametophyte. Pteridophytes were the first group of plants to have vascular structures such as true roots, stems, and leaves, which allow them to live in a variety of environments, from moist and shaded areas such as forests and swamps to dry, sunnier habitats such as deserts and grasslands. Pteridophytes reproduce through spores, which are produced in specialized structures called sporangia. The spores are released into the air and are dispersed by the wind. When the spore lands in a suitable environment, it will germinate and grow into a small heart-shaped structure called a prothallus, the gametophyte phase, which produces male and female gametes, which then unite to form a fertilized egg. Male pteridophyte gametes, called antherozoids, require water to swim to the archegonium, the female sex organs of a pteridophyte. The fertilized egg develops into a new fern plant, which eventually produces its own spores, continuing the cycle. Here we see that the sporophyte phase is dominant. Gymnosperms are vascular plants that produce exposed seeds without enclosing them in fruits. Their tough exterior makes them hardy plants that can survive in a wide range of extreme climates such as very cold or dry climates in nutrient-poor soils. Gymnosperms also have true roots, leaves, and stems and do not require water for fertilization. Sperms reproduce sexually. They have separate male and female cones, which are modified leaves that bear the reproductive structures. Male cones produce pollen, which contain male gametes, and release it into the air. The wind carries pollen to the female cones, which contain the female reproductive structures called ovules. The pollen germinates on the ovules, and the sperm cells fertilize the eggs, forming zygotes. The fertilized ovules develop into seeds, which are protected by cone scales. The seeds are dispersed by wind or animals and can remain dormant until favorable circumstances arise. The sporophyte phase is dominant and long-lived, whereas the gametophyte phase is subordinate. Angiosperms are the most diverse, the largest, and the most recent plant phylum. They are vascular plants with true roots, leaves, and stems, and they produce flowers and seeds in enclosed fruits. They can be found in a wide range of environments, including forests, grasslands, deserts, tundra, and aquatic habitats. Angiosperms reproduce sexually via the production of flowers and pollen. Pollen can be dispersed by wind or pollinators. Flowers can be male, female, or hermaphroditic, and they are often brightly colored and fragrant to attract pollinators such as bees, butterflies, birds, bats, and mice. Pollinators transfer pollen from the male to the female parts of the flower, where fertilization occurs. The fertilized ovule develops into a seed, which is enclosed in a protective fruit that can be dispersed by animals, wind, or water. Angiosperms do not rely on water for reproduction or fertilization, as their gametes are dispersed by pollinators and wind. The sporophyte is the dominant generation, although gametes are produced by flowers. In a hermaphroditic flower, pollen travels from the anther, where the pollen is produced, to a sticky stigma, the receptacle for the pollen, where the pollen germinates and develops a pollen tube towards the ovary, where the female ovules are produced and fertilizes the ovule.